Hollow Knight Silksong is a game that was announced way back in 2019, and since the game is not released yet, I decided to make it myself. Silksong is an upcoming video game being developed by Team Cherry. It is the highly anticipated sequel to Hollow Knight, a 2D Metroid game that involves unlocking new abilities while exploring various areas. In this remake, I'll be making my own original area, enemies, and bosses. And I'll leave a link below so that you guys can play as well. In my previous videos, I've already created a working player controller that allows the player to move, jump, attack, and many more. Basically, I reused the script, but I made a few modifications. Essentially, I made the controls tighter and faster by increasing the jump speeds such that you reach the maximum height quicker. I also made the player fall faster by increasing the gravity scale when you have a negative velocity. As a result, the jumps feel less floaty, and you have more control of your movement, which results in a faster and more fluid combat. Before anything else, I'd like to quickly mention that I recently created a Discord server, and several members were really kind enough to help with some of the art, soundtrack, and playtesting. So massive shout out to everyone to help me in making this game much more enjoyable. After adjusting the controls, I began working on building my own original area. Honestly, I'm not very good at art, I'm only good at being inspired by other people's art. So I based my area off the coral forest from Silksong, cause it looks cool. Anyways, I drew some simple repeating tiles, and by utilizing Unity's tile map editor, it allows me to quickly create the levels. Afterwards, I then added some foreground and background props, but at different distances to the camera, which creates this parallax effect. After designing a quick level, I welcome you to Placeholder! Honestly, I'm not very good at naming. I'll come up with something later. Next, I began working on designing my own original enemies, each with their own unique characteristics. Got inspiration from existing enemies from Hollow Knight. Also, I was playing a bunch of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom at the time, which may have inspired most of the enemy designs and attacks. Essentially, all the enemies follow a pretty basic pattern. Each enemy have their own field of view, and they will move back and forth until the player enters their line of sight. Some would simply chase the player, some would launch out projectiles, others would perform melee attacks, and there are some that have really cool attacks that is working perfectly fine. But I gave my best attempt. Another thing I improved on since my last video was that the instant the enemy sees you, they immediately start charging at the player. Instead, this time the enemy will get jump scared and startle first. You scared me. After designing a bunch of enemies, I added some loot, which gets dropped when an enemy is defeated. Anyways, these little rosary beads, as seen in some gameplay footage, will act as currency to purchase various tools and upgrades. Furthermore, the enemies will also drop these shards, which will act as resources to craft tools. Following my previous video, I made some various tools and equipments, which gives the player different types of attacks, such as a throwing pin, a grenade, some spike traps, and a runaway saw blade. Or passive abilities, which give ongoing bonuses to the player. And obviously, these tools were given very proper names. So in order to make purchases, I created a simple NPC that will act as a shop. And I don't know why, but this fella looks very dashing for some reason. I then began working on creating a simple dialogue system. However, I have no clue how to do that. But luckily, Brackets has a great tutorial on that exact problem. And by following the video, we now have a dialogue system. Next, I wanted to build a map in which the player can keep track of the levels they have traversed. What I did was I created a bunch of layers, each representing a different room on the map, and by using the almighty hash map. Each time that the player enters a new scene, the game will try and match the scene name to a layer name. If there's a match, part of the map will be toggled on. Something that I implemented more in this version of my game compared to my previous videos is that I actually added sound effects to the entire game. And I also decided to give vocals to the enemies by using none other than my own beautiful voice. I mean, really, how tough can voice acting be? I tried. So now that I'm more than a month into this project, I made about 15 different levels and about 10 enemies. But all of a sudden, I decided, you know what? I want to suffer more. And so, I expanded the scope of the project! Basically, I decided to add another area with this ruin/temple-like aesthetic, which ended up increasing the number of different levels to over 50! And in order to keep some level variety, such that you weren't just traveling scene to scene, I added some arenas, in which the player is forced to survive several waves of enemies. I created a spawner script, which will contain a various number of enemies. When the player first enters the arena, a script will call each spawner and check if there's an enemy to spawn. If all enemies in the wave is defeated, the game will once again call each spawner to spawn an enemy. If no enemies are spawned, then the arena is cleared permanently. Also, in the original Hollow Knight game, there are a few platforming challenges which feature spikes that upon contact forces the player to respawn. By adding some invisible respawn points, such that if the player collides with these hazards, the game will respawn the player at the most recent save point. In one of the Silksong trailers, the few that have been shown, there was this one segment in which the player is trying to escape from some rising lava. I attempted to recreate this section in my game, but with thorny vines, which is also somehow rising, don't question it, by simply adding an animator to the thorns and inserting a keyframe with a new destination, it interpolates the movement. And by disabling and re-enabling the animator, it resets the entire sequence. Such that if the player gets caught by the hazard, the player will take some damage and respawn at the beginning. As the player reaches the home stretch, before fighting the final boss, I added one final challenge. In order to reach the final boss, there is this elevator that the player must take. However, it is inoperable as it is tangled up in these thick vines. So obviously the player must find and destroy all these things, which causes these thick vines to despawn for some reason. But along the way, there will be many difficult enemies and obstacles standing in the way. Once all the vines are clear, the player can take the elevator to the top floor of the temple, in which they'll face the ultimate, extremely challenging, menacing Scourge of the Watermelon Temple! Bill. Yeah, so my final boss was inspired by one of the bosses showcased in Silksong's reveal trailer, but I integrated my own original attacks. We got this table slam that spawns shockwaves, as well as a whiny screech that questions the architecture of the building, by spawning some bubbles in a random order at several fixed locations. And as you continue to damage the boss, eventually Bill will be stunned, indicating a phase shift, where the boss will start performing new attacks, such as this weird move that causes thorny vines to appear, which will linger around the stage as an obstacle for other attacks. These thorns will disappear after a few seconds, or if the player deals enough damage to them. And the secret, long lost technique, just straight up punching the player. Anyways, that's all for this video. There are many other stuffs and secrets that I have not mentioned, that way there are things left for you to find and uncover yourself. But I will showcase a few clips of some of the highlights of the game. So without further ado, here is Hollow Knight Silksong, but you can play it. This took over 4 months to make, and man, am I just so exhausted. Anyways, so let me know down in the comments below what kind of game or remake you want to see me make next. But yeah, if you want to help support me and you want to see more stuff happen faster of higher quality, I think pressing the like button, subscribe button might help. I don't know, do what you want. Anyways, feel free to try out my game somewhere below. Alright, so about to see a farewell words there. What was he saying again?